Welcome to Land Language, the podcast transforming landscapes from toxic to regenerative. We're your host, Brit from Blueprint Earth,
and co-host Bethany from Bethany Rydmark Landscapes.
We explore beautiful, functional design through conversations with scientists, vendors, contractors, and designers who are changing the industry.
Whether you're in the field or at the drafting table, join us as we explore regenerative practices that care for people, place, and planet.
Let's dig in. Well, today we've got the honor of having Angelique Robb with us from SYNKD Media. And if you don't know Angelique yet, what you will find out about her soon is that she runs this incredible platform for truly the regenerative landscaping industry. It's a place where people come to get educated about innovation within our field. And we'll have Angelique talk all about her magazine and her events, of course. Make sure you get the deets. But what's so curious to us and why we just are so honored to have you as well is to hear some of your favorites that you've picked up in terms of products and innovation as you've moved across seas, and to learn a bit about really why you started down this road. Because I think that the reason we do big things like you're doing is because we have a really strong why.
I agree. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so happy to have you with us.
So I want to jump in to really a little bit about your background, because I think if we look at your background from the petroleum industry to landscape design, we're just going whiplash, what what did you do to get here?
I know. Well, it's never a straight route, isn't it? Well, I mean, for some people it is. Some people know what they want to do from the age of 5, but I didn't. I, found it easy in math and science, and I was interested in that. But I also loved art growing up, so I didn't know what to do. And I remember my mom saying, "I don't want you to be a starving artist," and I didn't know what real careers paid, what it looked like. I think you never really know until you get out into industry. So I decided to take the practical route and go in engineering. But I found the most unique engineering by chance. I was offered a scholarship if I would go into petroleum engineering, which I didn't know what that was. And basically, it's dealing with the earth and, drilling through minerals, through the earth to get to petroleum, gas or oil, and produce it to the surface. But what I loved about it is the creative nature, and you had to visualize what was underground and use the data that you had. And sometimes you don't have that much data to picture what you're doing. And I was in charge of drilling, and I would develop the plan, the engineering plan, and then I was in charge of the rig. And so if there were any operational issues, they would call me and I would decide the way forward. So it meant that I had to manage all the aspects. Like there was the mud program and the mud engineer that was a specialist on, cleaning the hole, carrying the cuttings up. There's a geologist that was monitoring the cuttings and determining where we are in the sequences, the historic, when the material was deposited, the era. So just a lot of details, but everybody knew their business. And my role was to make a decision considering everybody's input, what we should do next when we had a problem or when we had a decision point. And I like to explain that because it's really very similar to what you do when you project manage a design build project or design build maintain project in the landscape industry. It's managing all the specialists that may know everything about this type of decking and what screws to use and how to, build the framing, but they don't know the overall bigger picture. And likewise in every aspect. So I did that. I worked offshore in the Gulf of Mexico on land in the States. And then I ultimately took a job in the UK, working in the North Sea, working in Aberdeen. And then I've taught in lots of other countries in the Middle East, in the Far East, um, in Eastern Europe. So traveling around a lot. And I guess it just reminds me that it's such a unique industry that has a creative flair to it, but it's all about people and communicating with people. And so while I was in Houston, before I moved to Scotland, I would watch these garden transformation shows as like a relaxing thing to do. And I got out my graph paper and I, made a scaled drawing of a 2-level deck with pergola, patio, planting, everything. And I showed up at Home Depot going, I need $5,000 worth of stuff delivered to my house tomorrow. And it was a very satisfying project. Even though I wasn't happy with it, like my cuts weren't good enough and, things. But every day, so after building it, every day coming home from my engineering work, I would go and walk around my garden or my backyard, I should say, and see what was growing and how much it grew, just in that day, because that's in Houston. um, and really loved the aspect of first the conceptual work, the building it, and watching it either grow and thrive or something not thriving and adjusting and learning from it. So fast forward, I end up in Scotland and it really stuck with me. And I didn't see many landscape designs or installs that I thought were done well enough. Moss was growing on the paving. And why do they have paving in a shaded area where they're not going to sit anyway because it's not the South? It's cold there. You want to be in the sun any chance you get. Maybe a bit like where you guys are, but so it's problem solving with a design flair, but also with construction and living organisms. And it evolves over time. And what's good from day one isn't good 10 years on, maybe, because of now you have shade, you have established trees. It's always changing. So it keeps it exciting. I think I also, if I do things that are too similar for too long, I change jobs. I've really lost track of how many oil and gas companies I work for because I would get a bit restless and change companies or change projects and do something different. So I think the love of what I have for the landscape design, build, maintain industry is how challenging it is in every climate. There's also all these innovations coming with materials to last longer, better quality, but also understanding the science of trees. And, there's still so much to learn. And a lot of the problems that I faced as a business owner were between the specialists, between the silos. Like I would either lose money or, communication problems in between design and construction, in between construction and installing horticulture, in between all of those and maintenance. And even a small company, it was a challenge.
Totally.
And you're juggling weather, everything. So it keeps it interesting. Never ending challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you just touched on is the pain point of every client that goes through a business that is just one of those verticals, design, build, or maintain. Unless one of those verticals, which usually starts with design, like Bethany has a really great group of community and contractors around them that they have this like lasting ethos based relationship with, where they're all on the same heartbeat in the way that they are all experts.
And communication. It doesn't matter if you're the same company or a separate company. It all boils down to communication between the groups.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you can all be thinking completely different things in pursuit of the same mission even, but if you're not in dialogue and if you're not getting clear and if you're not making sure that we're in sync, it can go haywire and the best vision can flounder. It's thoughtful to me even in this conversation, this moment, the reminder about how communication is essential and also not just communication as an item, as a thing, but the tone of communication, the style of communication, the way that we carry that forward to help bring people into productive group efforts. And that can be on a garden scale, that can be on a global scale. I was sharing with Brit before we started recording. I've been reading a book lately that's so inspiring, and so much of it is about this forward thinking, painting the picture of the future that we're wanting to go toward, and living in that future enough that we can time travel, quote unquote, to this future and then come back and continue to build in the present moment toward this thing. And it feels like, gosh, isn't that an amazing way to communicate a vision and keep people motivated out of the joy of what we can see that we can achieve, as opposed to
Yeah.
just only the kind of keep on the task, get coordinated, check the box, get it done, which can become the daily grind that can fizzle when we're exhausted.
But I think that is the norm in our industry because of, and I would say probably because there's not enough systems in place for companies to work to. And I mean, the good thing is there are people in the industry working on things like that, but our industry is kind of just get through the day, that's hard for anybody. And how do you make, so no wonder people get exasperated if you go, we need to change how we're doing things. We need to do things better. We need to communicate better. You can say all these things and it can be an added burden on everybody instead of the excitement that you need it to be to affect change.
It makes me think so much because, we do work with people like Bethany also, like we'll actually build other people's work. And I've had a lot of reflection on this because I always really like to do better and challenge myself to be better. And I think all three of us women sitting in this conversation are the same way. And when I think about what makes a project go well, because Bethany and I worked on a project last year and like the outcome wasn't what we wanted in the end. And it was just straight up communication.
Oh,
Like it's beautiful, it's great, it's going to thrive, the product is great, but like the communication of it could have just been so much better. And so I think about like the things that I've been learning in business development courses and stuff like that. And one of the ways we've started implementing just to give people an output of this conversation, like what is a solution that we can work towards, because that's what we want to walk away with is the daily check-ins with your team in the morning are so important. The 15-minute, hey, let's move our bodies and stretch for the crew, and let's talk about what our intention is for today. What is the goal that we are achieving? And then we're going to work backwards and figure out exactly what we need. And honestly, we should have figured out what we needed yesterday. And so today is just about intention setting of what our goal is because we're prepared for this moment to hit go. And that's
yeah.
also about ritual. That's about weekly check-ins with your whole community of designers, builders, maintainers, if they're already on board, and structural engineers and civil engineers, the whole design team just sitting down and going like, okay, everyone, are we still on the same page? Does anyone have any new intel that we
Yeah.
need to add to the communication circuit board that needs to be delivered upon so that everyone is creating the most wonderful result for the client in the end, right? Because
Yeah.
that's what we want to do. We want to deliver a great product with a great experience and produce amazing ecological results because we are super badasses and know exactly what we're doing.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's harder than you think sometimes to be all on the same page. And I think, you talk about you guys working together, but there are companies that hand it over the fence, you know, and in our industry it's kind of common because of bidding and that one company does design work and they've never even met who does the construction work and they've never met who does the hort install and it's a different group maintaining.
Yeah, I've had that happen too. So CTA to any builders, architects, contractors out there, just get your people in the room. Your client is going to be way happier if you just put all the people in the room for a little round table. They figure out what their cadence is, monthly, weekly, whatever. And you just make sure, because your job as a builder and a contractor is to make sure the ship is being steered, to just get the people in the room so that this doesn't become a failed product.
Mhm.
And it seems so, Angelique, it seems like your media company is doing this on a macro scale, right? Like you're trying to get these industries to communicate with each other and learn with and from each other. Is that right? Can you speak more to that coordination?
Yes. So, and it's multifaceted, but what we're always looking for are businesses that are doing it well and can talk about a project that came together and maybe had some challenges. Not most projects do have challenges in one aspect or more, but how they've overcome it. But it like there's one that got put out today on social media, and it's a landscape architect that works with a landscape contractor, and they come together for projects similar as you two did. We're talking about, and how the project went well because of them working together and showing 3 different projects that they, in all the different styles that they produce as a team, even though they're 2 different companies. Um, so talking about how people do things differently than maybe they were taught, or how they used to do it, how they've learned to do things, but also companies. And I'm thinking of Peter Wimberg in Ohio. He rewilded his yard at his home, and then he decided to offer it to all his neighbors because, like, this is what we can do for a set price if anybody wants this as well. And he expected like 5% of them to say yes. He had 25%
Wow.
of the people say that. And then he's been doing more and more projects. He also has a team of maintenance professionals that only do naturalistic maintenance because it is very different than normal maintenance. So like he tested the demand, and now he's running with it and growing that part of the company. And so we did a company profile on how he did it. Um, but also there's a lot of products, and it often can be hardscaping products. So tell me if I'm talking too much about hardscaping, but
No, it's
We,
relevant.
you know,
Please.
yeah, we can stay
okay,
there.
okay.
Softscaping is kind of the given, I feel like. I mean, I say
It
that,
is, and it's,
but
you know, deeper roots with native plants, and but hardscaping, it's a weird middle ground. And one example is Mark Woolbite, who has been doing like plantable living retaining walls for 30 years, but making them out of different products, different materials. So he's the inventor and the manufacturer. And he said, like, landscape architects love what we're doing, but none of the contractors wanted to touch anything that, because they didn't know about soil for plants. And they're like, we don't know how to build that, and we don't feel comfortable warranting it, and or building it and warranty. So it's when you start to mix plants and hardscaping, at least in the States, there's like a big gap. And in Europe, it's not so much of a gap. I think that it's always been kind of woven together, even though there still is a bit of a divide between landscape architects and contractors, but here's so much more. And I think there's just not a group for it. So if you have these hardscaping, we do retaining walls, we do plants, there's no mix. And so living retaining walls is that one of the technologies that I go, oh my goodness, it changes the whole playing field for design. Because if you imagine, and it's mostly because of stormwater management and erosion and things like that, but it's also related. I mean, if you're a landscape company and you scrape the side of a hill and try to plant it up, you will be fighting a battle for the next 10 years to keep those plants in place, the soil from washing out, the plants establishing, getting enough water. Like, but these walls. So Mark's one of the inventors. There's another company that has a more industrial solution. And when I say industrial, I'm talking 70 feet tall, no batten, and it's all planted, and there's no concrete. You would need quite a base that's compacted rock, but it doesn't have to be. Well, I don't know about for the 70-foot tall. I'm getting into the technical details, but they can build a lot higher walls if they're battened. They have civil engineers that design it. You do need geogrid over a certain height. All the things, but the fact that it doesn't stop the water, and the water feeds the plants. You want it to filter through the water, through the plants, through the wall, if you like. And, then you can build around mature trees because you're not going to waterlog them, and you don't have to build such a huge, drainage behind this concrete wall. There are just so many benefits.
That's fantastic. I mean, and I'm excited to have them on the podcast because I want to get every single nitty-gritty detail.
And that making the connection between the idea, again, like, designers or folks aware of the materials, as you said a minute ago, it only goes so far if installers aren't confident in using them and putting them in. And there can be this, enormous glut of fantastic visions we could be doing and implementing all over the place. And if the community surrounding in the construction industry isn't ready and confident enough to do that first job and see how it goes, and then feel comfortable to do the 4th and the 8th and the 12th, I think I'm speaking for myself, but I think we share this, how do we keep these little balls rolling and get the momentum so that people have enough ambition and excitement to experiment, knowing that it's an experiment. If a region's not in the habit of using this or doing this, it's going to be maybe hard to get that initial go, but that's the passion of vision that we can try to bring forward. And then once you've proven it, once you've demonstrated it, once someone has, put that sweat equity in and they've, all right, we did it. Here are the lessons learned. Here's what we can do next time. Then, wow, sky's the limit. And I feel like, even as you're describing these living retaining walls, oh my goodness, this is me agonizing. But I mean, I've had projects from 9 years ago where, advocating for the concept of it and having limited local knowledge and resources on my part. So I'm, chatting with a client, throwing around the ideas, imagining and wishing, and ultimately it didn't go forward because for the scale and the location, this is something that was out in the Columbia River Gorge, so it's not even really local to the Portland metro area. So you're already looking for, a builder that would travel to a distance and try something new. And it was too much of a hurdle to overcome. Again, 9 years ago, imagining this. But I'm thinking right now of active projects where I would love to be able to advocate for this sort of install. And
there are builders that do them in multi-state regions that they only, like industrial builders that do it. But what's crazy is I met this company 5 years ago. I mean, this company is out of Canada, and I met them at an ASLA conference, and my mind was blown, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, because you can even build it in the water, like, so it doesn't even have to be dry land. It could be to build up the side of an eroding river. It's cutting into a bank, let's say, and you can do that. And I use it as an example of cross-disciplinary, products that we all need to know that are in our toolbox. And I haven't met one landscape architect or contractor or design and build company that have heard of it in 5 years. And when I've talked to the company, I have tried to get them to advertise with us unsuccessfully, but they said that they're in more countries, or they sell more to other countries than the US, all around the world. And I think it's because we're so siloed.
yes,
There's all kind of little things that could add up to not working well, but like landscape architects that maybe don't get out into the field. They don't understand all of the complications that they need to work around. Well, the other thing is that you need 3 bids. You need a material, that can a living retaining wall, and you need 3 bids. Well, then that throws it out because there's only one possible, option, or maybe there's another one out there that I don't know about. But we try to do the research to find these solutions and show how it can transform the industry. And I think water is probably the biggest reason that we need to combine all of the industries, because we're wasting it. I'm in South Louisiana. I've had friends' cars flood, but yet the trees are dying because they don't have enough soil, and the runoff goes straight into the street, and the roots are all under the pavement. And it's like our natural world needs more irrigation, even though we have all this water, just by the grading and the way we've been building things for decades, and we don't realize how much harm we've done. So, that's just one little example.
Amen to that.
One
It's
little.
perfect. It's
I know.
exactly true.
People, go listen to those last 30 seconds and just try that on, okay? Let's talk about grading and stormwater management.
It is landscaping. Like, it's not somebody else's problem. It's if you're in the landscape industry, it is our duty.
It is. I mean, as somebody who's my whole business in our brick, like the thing that we are known for, the thing that we actually sell is not landscaping. It's not sexy gardens. It's not sexy hardscapes. It's stormwater management and soil building, right? And like people probably don't know that when they see our gardens, but that is why we get sold when I go up against any other design team. Bethany's also of this mindset. But it's why people like us get sold on every single project, because we know and understand it and we can speak the language, and the results are clear. People are thrilled. They have thriving gardens. They're seeing water sequester on the site. And it's so important that like we're actively building our own software to document exactly how much water we're sequestering on site, how much soil we're building, how much carbon we're sequestering, right? And this is really cool data. And one thing I want to say, and I want to commit to, because I want to say that like we're going to go do this living wall thing, is Bethany and I will find a project that we do and we're going to install this living wall. Okay. And then we're going to do a use case on it. Yeah. I mean, why not?
Yeah.
Don't be scared.
And we'll cover it.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Let's video it. Let's time lapse it.
Yeah.
Show what can be done. Again, it's so much of this is painting the picture of the future that we want to advocate for. And so much of our job, speaking for myself as a designer, I take it seriously. When people come, they're looking for solutions, and not everyone has the same, they're here because they're not a designer. They're here because they're asking for a vision. They're asking for a sequence that they can follow to make an improvement, to change something. And so our job is to help paint that picture and then be really crystal clear on how we're going to lead and guide them to that wonderful future. And it takes a little bit of courage and bravery to dabble in all the new things, but isn't that the most exciting piece, that we get to play this role in shaping where we're going? We've done the same things for so long. Now is the time to learn from these lessons of what we've mismanaged, the systems that are broken, the cities and landscapes that are dysfunctional. Who's going to change them if not us getting excited to say, here's a better way. Look at an example. Look what can be done. Look at how functional, healthy, beautiful, rewarding it is to be a part of it in all areas. As the client, as the designer, as the builder, we can take such pride in good work. And I'm still just saying this as the little cheerleader to myself. It's just overcoming the things that haven't been tried before in our, in our little footprint or our little region. And once we've overcome it, we've proved it. The proof is in the living and doing of it, and then it's not impossible anymore.
Totally. And if you want to know that people can be successful doing this, and that these kind of things aren't hippie and they don't get paid for, go look at our 2 successful designers in season 1. Terremoto with Jenny Jones, super successful firm, does innovative projects all across the country, and Xanthi White from New Zealand. Those 2 design, and Xanthi being a build firm too, show you that what we're talking about right here is actually being implemented in a successful way where there are good profit margins.
Yes. Well, and speaking of that, I interviewed Molly Finch. She might be a good one for the podcast too, or she is a good one. She talked about in our magazine making removal of invasives profitable. It's very profitable. Why landscape companies should offer this as a service. And I love that whenever you can couple, you know, ecological practices with profitability, because it isn't always seen as the compatible, but it is. And I think that more people, just like my example with Peter, people want it. And we're just not giving them the option. Just think if you gave people the option to do something more ecological, saving water on site, absorbing all the water on site, any of these things, I think you'd be surprised how many people would take you up on it.
Totally. Nobody wants to live in a Himalayan blackberry field with ivy growing up their grand firs. Just saying. Because that's the alternative. I want to talk a little bit about the hardscaping material. When I first chatted with you, Angelique, like we were talking about this paving material that you recently spoke about. If you don't know, Angelique also has this really cool membership with Sync. So if like you join, and it's reasonable, it's like $40 a month. If you join her membership, you start to become a part of learning this stuff from her eyes, which means you're learning this stuff from around the world, not just like Mutual Materials and Belgard and all those people, but you're actually like learning. No dig on them. Okay, I'm sure they're really nice people, but we want to do better. And so when you're in Angelique and you're
Yes.
in the sync world, you're going to start to figure out exactly what it is that you need to be working with. And that's why the like $40 a month is just such a no-brainer, because we all want to be super duper in our jobs. We all want to make sure that we're making the impact that we have in our hearts, right? And a lot of times it's not even a financial like, oh, that's going to be so much more expensive. A lot of times it's just like a sidestep. And sometimes it is more expensive. But as you're saying, it really comes down to the fact that when people are educated, when your clients know why they're choosing something and the impact that that
Yes.
has, they want to do it if they can. 10 out of 10.
Yes.
If they can, they will.
And it's also about options. Like you might, again, giving your client options. Do you want to, yes, we can fix this broken concrete driveway, let's say, but we could, you know, for the same price, we could skim it with this permeable hardscaping product. It's natural stone. You can keep the broken concrete in situ, so you're not going to landfill. You're not putting more cement in your garden, in your landscape. Sorry, your yard. I have to get the American words in my head.
Don't
Garden's
be
good.
sorry. I
Um,
love it.
um, and you have a beautiful natural stone driveway for like less cost than it would be to get, diggers in and pull up the concrete, transport it to the landfill. Um, and you have this like a superior looking driveway, and it's still permeable. So, you know, as long as it's competent. I mean, you don't want, if the cement is broken up so much that it's not competent, then that's another thing. But I see a lot of potential in even doing that. So, and then you can do more jobs. The client's getting a cheaper job for a higher quality product, and you're not adding to landfill and transportation.
Can somebody out there raise their hand if they're going to say no to this, please?
Well, and I think it's not always as straightforward as that. It's like, what is the best thing for the environment? Is sometimes, you have to have trade-offs sometimes, but really there are some things that are no-brainers, that it actually just takes a little bit of your time to get trained on it. Now, I had a team in Scotland, and they really were adverse to change. And they liked doing what they did before because they figured it out and they just wanted to do that. And so they were happy when, the aspects of the job included things that they had done before. And I was always like, oh, we figured that out. Let's do something better or newer. And I know that stressed them out a bit. but like this permeable product, I mean, we call it resin-bound aggregate in Scotland. And there are some different names, but it's actually like 8 to 11 mil chips of natural stone that have been washed, kiln dried, and then it's like a 2-part resin that you mix and you trowel in. I had somebody come and train the team, and then they loved doing it. It was like, the best thing. They wanted to do that job, and so I think that also can be a barrier to stop and get trained and do something new just because you have too much on your plate, you have too much going on. You just have that comfort level of doing the same thing. But when it's as big as like absorbing water on your project and preventing other areas from getting wetter and causing more problems, it's a win-win.
Yes,
And you
please.
can even do designs with it and stuff like that. So there's lots of brands now in the US, but it's still relatively unknown. So like you said, Britt, we just had a talk on it earlier this week. That one was the Romex brand, and they're working through Dow Tile, and they're even using for porcelain paving, mortared in porcelain paving that has a permeable mortar base and permeable grouting. So it's a fix. They even drove a tank over it after 6 months of driving 18 wheelers over it, and it didn't break the bond,
That's
still permeable.
impressive. Sign me up. I'll
Yeah.
take it right now.
And we regularly have at least one supplier of that material at our events. And Britt, earlier you said we have annual events. We've now, starting this year, 2026, we're having 2 a year. So we had one in New Orleans in January, and we're having another one in Phoenix in September. And our goal is to get innovative products or services, so you'll have some software companies like the people that have already bought a table is Bob Yard. They have an AI program to do takeoffs from drawings. And, they're going to be there talking through how they're developing the next phase of what they do. But we try to get everybody in the room, and you're learning from people who have tried that, done that, or they're an account manager for this product or an technical expert of the permeable hardscaping. That's really the goal of our events, is to take decision makers and put them with other people that want to learn how to do things better. So not only are you learning from whoever's speaking or giving a talk, but you're learning from each other, and you're meeting business owners that have similar experience to you, and they've run up against brick walls and or challenges with introducing new materials and how they did it. And then that community persists, and they keep in touch. And I feel like very proud that I've created friendships around the US. Well, or I guess colleagues, that because it can feel very lonely if you're, one business owner with employees and you're the only change maker or person wanting to do better. And I think that, it's great that you two work together because it sounds like you have the same ethos, but maybe, not everybody has that. I know I didn't have that in Scotland. It was really hard to find people that were looking for better materials and better ways of doing things and would share, collaborate.
I think we're in a great season for it. I think people are excited to try to meet that moment. Speaking personally, a number of years back when I kind of had my own wake up call to realize, okay, I've spent so long designing with the same palette of materials and the same method and the same, and great folks that had ability to get it done. Concrete primarily, like beautiful acid etched concrete, great. But there came a moment where I realized we've got to expand, we have to change, we have to evolve, and that's daunting, but it's exciting. And then it just unleashes, all sorts of new creative inspiration. And I think that many folks in the industry right now are craving that. There's enough turnover, there's enough change, there's enough realizing that we're not where we were 20 years ago. The future is ours. What are we going to do to shape it? And speaking, from my world, and I guess not to pick on folks, but just to identify, so many of the women in my life that we chat with on a regular basis are really excited to collaborate. They're really excited to share resources. They're really excited to offer what they've learned and connect someone to something else and weave it together. And I'm so jazzed for that. There is not enough time to sit around and be isolationist and protectionist about things. There's like such a mindset, if I can diverge for a minute, there's trade secrets, and there's, the economics of success and how you need to protect your this and that. We all have to survive. We all have to pay our bills. We all have to do a good job, but there is so much potential to make things better and better for all of us if we can keep sharing and sparking knowledge and sparking innovation. And I think that's my biggest reward of the last several years of just choosing as much as I can over and over. What does that look like? To be open-hearted and ask and share. And don't be afraid to look like you don't know, because often I don't know. I'm really curious, but I don't know. So I'm going to ask. I'm going to find out who does know something, who's willing to sit down and talk to
Yeah.
me. And those doors start to open. And then, great, I've learned more. Let me share it with you. Let me send it out to my email group of gals that are in the industry that want to know a little more. Like, let's just be generous and keep building what we know together. That makes me excited.
And just to kind of layer on to that with a little bit of truth bomb is that when you tell somebody exactly what they need to solve their problem and make them level up in their world, about 10%, if you're lucky, are actually going to take action on that, right? And I challenge everyone listening here to be that 10% and to expand that 10%, because we need to make sure that we have healthy soils, that we have clean water, not just for us, but for the future generations. We have pollinators. And that's what's truly at risk here, right? We're kind of in this time period where we're teetering on what has been okay, and we know that it's not okay anymore and we need to shift, but we don't know how. So we just flounder in that, I don't know. And that just causes paralysis, right? But be the 10% and expand it to the
Yes.
25 to the 50%. Because the truth is, if not, we're all just going to die.
Well, and I also think what Bethany said is the the collaboration makes magic happen. Maybe you have an idea to do one thing, somebody else has an idea to do something else, but actually when you combine it all together, it makes 10 times better. The project 10 times better. Like that's where the magic happens, is through collaboration. And it makes it easier, and maybe that 10%, I've heard that number before, and it's terribly low for who takes action. So, if we can make it easier on other people to move the needle, then, it'll change for everybody.
Yeah. And our promise here at Land Language and your promise at SYNKD is that you will be a resource for showing exactly, and we will be a resource for showing exactly the steps that we are doing to innovate. And we might innovate beyond what we're innovating right now at some point, because there's always going to be better answers. So keep up with SYNKD and come back to these resources of Land Language and the SYNKD community to just find the resources, because there's going to be the ones that you're ready for in these two places.
As Brit mentioned, right? We have this title, Land Language, and so much of it is about communication and the words we choose and how we share the message of what we shared. This is what shapes the world. The way we talk about things and the way we think about things changes the impact that we eventually make. And I wonder, in your world, again, going back to this origin in petrochemical engineering petroleum engineering. Is that right? You'll have to correct me. This is
Yes,
not my
petroleum.
realm.
Yeah, that's
But
okay.
coming from this place of, an engineering mindset and working your way into the world of landscape design and in these places of integration across previously very siloed industries, and you're weaving worlds and changing mindsets in your messaging. Talk to me about what that language means to you if you think about communication going forward. Where do you land on speaking about the land?
Where do I land? Speaking about the land, okay. Um, well, what I've so have you ever heard the term, between the US and the UK, we're divided by a common language? So, when I first started this, I was very careful to, make sure that I wasn't as because my accent has been distorted living in Scotland, and then I realized I needed to use what made myself different. But like at first, I found a lot of weird things, just saying garden instead of landscape. Some words I didn't realize in the early days that I was confusing people. Like I would talk about landscaping with paving, and I even had paving companies say, "Oh no, we don't deal with landscaping. We're only," oh, they wouldn't say, but they were like, "We don't deal with landscape companies." And I was like, "That's a funny thing to say. You sell outdoor paving." And I didn't realize that they're maybe used to hardscaping as the word, or, like all these little things. I felt like I had to learn coming back to the US because I was never in the industry in the US, only in the UK. And so it's a it was a good lesson in how it can actually divide you from the people you're trying to educate. And so, we've worked hard to go, we want to talk to landscape architects and landscape designers and hardscapers and decking installers. And, that there's all these niches. And so we try to make sure that we're not leaving anybody out, and we're using words that will attract the right people, and they'll all have something to learn in each issue. But it's a challenge. I think I didn't realize how just communicating with the wrong words sometimes could.
I love hearing that from you because it really just gives people permission to grow and to not be perfect, right? Because
Yeah.
when we switch industries or we're new into this industry, there's so much nuance about like, oh, what does the word even mycorrhiza mean? And it's like knowing that you can ask questions is really important because it helps you be able to shift your mindset from like, I don't know what the language is here in the US, even though we both speak English. In Scotland it is that, and in the US it is here. And why are people telling me no? Because I'm saying landscape and not hardscape, And my question is like, I don't know why. Why would they ever say that? That's crazy. They're telling like 2/3 of their customers to, pound salt.
Go somewhere else.
Yeah. And I love that permission. So thank you so much for sharing that. And, when I think about how to really kind of pull our industry together and these innovators together, which are often the artists, right? The people who are believing of a possibility that's different, of a world that can be changed. I just want you to know that the synced community is a community that is allowed. And I love that your goal with synced is to bring the people together so that there is community, so that there is networking, so that there is industry secret sharing, because I think that's really important for us to be innovative. And the truth is that it's going to be a tide that rises together. It is a tide that rises together, you know? So just show up.
Just show up. Yes. And I'm so glad that I got to meet you ladies. Love what you're
Likewise.
doing.
Yes,
Yeah.
so fun. Thank you so much, Angelique.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yep. Take care.